Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Rent-A-Friend Radio. For Feedback Friday, we have a special event today. Instead of just the normal feedback off of Twitter, we're going for the Epic Fail of the Week. The Epic Fail of the Week comes from, ironically, theweek.com, in an article called Why You Should Stop Believing in Evolution. The irony will be that Keith is about to show us that he doesn't understand evolution, but he really believes it. And along those lines, I have a special guest joining me in the studio this week, right from the Understanding Evolution team himself, their lovable mascot, Osky.
Good morning. It is a real thrill to be here.
Alright, Osky will be reading Keith's words from the article, and I will be explaining why it's completely wrong.
You're a one-trick pony.
Thanks. Anyway, Osky, start at the top, and I'll interrupt until we're done.
Okay, Why you should stop believing in evolution. You don't believe in it, you either understand it or you don't. By Keith Blanchard Pipe, August 4, 2014. When people joyously discover on Ancestry.com that they related to, say, a medieval archduke or a notorious Victorian criminal, evolutionary biologists may be permitted to snicker. Because in actuality, we are all related. Humans all share at least one common ancestor if you go far enough back. You are related to every king and criminal who ever lived, to Gandhi and Paris Hilton and Carrot Top. You are even related to me.
Yes, but the common ancestors are Adam and Eve. Biblical creation offers a way to make this declaration true, but Darwin doesn't actually allow all humans to be related within humanity. Darwinism does have a hierarchy of human evolution, wherein some humans are more ape than others, and of course, the white Europeans are the most evolved. Darwin said so, and so did the evolutionists of the last century, to the extent that an African man named Utabenga was kept in a New York zoo because they felt he was more ape than man. I don't make this stuff up, you know. Check Wikipedia if you don't believe me.
It's remarkable how poorly understood evolution is today.
And he is about to demonstrate that he understands it very poorly. Can you hear Alana singing, "Isn't it ironic? Don't you think?"
How easily debated it is, given that its rules have been in place at least since life on Earth began, and that the truth of it is easily demonstrated. In fact, the basic theory has been in a state of continuous reconfirmation since Darwin proposed it in 1859.
The first thing Keith doesn't understand about Darwinian theory is the history of Darwinian theory. He's obviously never heard of neo-Darwinism, which says Darwin was wrong about things. There's stuff in Origin of Species which no Darwinist still believes. That's why modern evolutionary theory is called neo-Darwinism. You don't get a fancy new Matrix-inspired name by staying the same. It would be more accurate to say that evolution has been in a constant state of redefinition since he first proposed it. Also worth noting that Louis Pasteur published his findings and proved the law of biogenesis this same year. The law of biogenesis says that life does not spontaneously arise from non-life, as Darwinism requires it to. Evolution violates proven scientific laws.
With geology, biology, anthropology, carbon dating, Pangea, and every dinosaur bone ever found providing a non-stop barrage of additional proof points.
Oy vey, this is the kind of paper-thin rant I expect from an atheist with a 5th grade science education. Every dinosaur bone ever? How about the ones found recently by Mary Schweitzer, and a host of other people with soft tissue in them, proving they cannot be millions of years old? How about the bones that show stasis, or out-of-sequence fossils like the modern birds who show up in rocks below their alleged dinosaur ancestors? How about the modern human footprints, found with dinosaur footprints in rocks alleged to be millions of years before humans? In short, this is a laundry list of ignorance from a guy who seems to have gotten his science from Bill Nye's Kid Show. No disrespect meant, but I could easily use every single one of these to explain how they work against evolution. In fact, sometime later I shall. Head on over to the Evolution 101 series and subscribe, and you'll see me do that. In the meantime, I'm sending Keith here back to the 5th grade.
Here are the rules, in a nutshell. Genes, stored in every cell, are the body's blueprints. They code for traits like eye color, disease susceptibility, and a bazillion other things that make you you. Reproduction involves copying and recombining these blueprints, which is complicated, and errors happen. Errors are passed along in the code to future generations. The way a smudge on a photocopy will exist on all subsequent copies.
A good metaphor. Now consider this. How many smudges on photocopies do you need before your copy of Green Eggs and Ham becomes War and Peace? Because that's the story he's trying to sell you.
This modified code can, but doesn't always, produce new traits in successive generations. An extra finger, sickle-cell blood, increased tolerance for Miley Cyrus shenanigans.
The examples he gives are duplication of a feature, so nothing new, a disease, so nothing advantageous, and more dumber, so no help. If evolution has this mountain of evidence, why is he incapable of coming up with examples of actual evolution? Why not just list the additions of new genes and new features to living things? Maybe because that has never been observed. You know what? Not maybe. Because it has never been observed. So all we can offer on the side of evolution is an accidental duplication or two forms of decay. Textbooks have this same problem. They say, mutations add the new genetic information which drives evolution forward. Now, here's some examples of lethal mutations. To me, this is like a restaurant saying, our food is the best. Dining here is a great experience. Here's a few customers who have gotten food poisoning by eating here. Come on, Kenny, it's not the science of rockets. If you are going to claim mutations add genetic information that drives evolution forward, then you ought to provide examples of mutations adding genetic information to drive evolution forward. It is not the science of rockets!
When these new traits are advantageous, longer legs in gazelles, organisms survive and replicate at a higher rate than average, and when disadvantageous, brittle skulls in woodpeckers, they survive and replicate at a lower rate.
Fun fact, natural selection, which he describes a bit more in the next paragraph, was first discovered and published on by a creationist, Edward Blythe, who used it to explain how God allows great variety but keeps the created kinds from getting too badly mutated, which is what we observe. When you really do understand both the creation and evolution models, you find that what they call microevolution is them cherry-picking observable parts out of the creation model and slapping the evolution label on it.
That's a little oversimplified, but the general idea. As advantageous traits become the norm within a population and disadvantageous traits are weeded out, each type of creature gradually morphs to better fit its environment. The very notion of species is even a little misleading. A discrete-sounding artifice created for the convenience of people who live about 100 years. If you had eyes to see the big picture, and could watch life change on a geologic time frame, you'd see constant gradual change, as generations adapt to circumstance.
Actually, the notion of species, much like evolution, is without a universally agreed-on definition. That's part of the problem.
It's that incredibly slow pace that makes it hard for people to grasp intuitively. When you only live long enough to see 3 or 4 generations, a few ticks of evolution's clock, any tiny generational changes, like humanity getting marginally blonder or taller.
Hey, remember when I accused Darwinism of being a racist white supremacist theory? Here you go, evolving toward blondness. Sorry, Africans, Asians, Hispanics, and Eskimos, you're not quite evolved enough. I don't make this stuff up, you know. When you don't believe me, it hurts my feelings.
Are dwarfed by differences in the members among any one generation. Pile on enough ins, and tiny pigeon horses gradually become readable by gradually less hairy apes. But it's impossible to see for yourself.
Impossible to see for yourself. So, by definition, would that not be something which must be taken on faith? And since science requires observation, he's just admitted that evolution is not science.
That's evolution left to proceed at its own lazy, trial and error pace. But it turns out you can make the gears turn a lot faster. In fact, we do it all the time. Have you ever seen strawberries in the wild? They are little tiny things, easily missed if you are not a bird or a bee. We bred them to be big and fat, specifically by only allowing the seeds from the biggest, fattest ones in each generation to reproduce.
Now pay attention. We are selecting from ones which are already there. The genes to make them big and fat already exist. We are merely weeding out the ones that don't have or express those genes. This is not the creation of new genes, and in no way does it demonstrate the mutation-added new features he describes above. This is bait and switch, my friends, but just wait. He's about to do it again.
We similarly manipulate almost every other natural food we eat today. Take a stroll through any modern produce section and you can see the fruits, literally and figuratively, of evolution turbocharged by human intervention.
Just a reminder, he said this a few lines up, but it's impossible to see for yourself. Now he's saying, we see it. I don't think he read this very carefully.
Dogs are another example. We invented the dog, starting with wolves and quickening the natural but pokey process of evolution by specifically selecting breeding pairs with desirable traits.
Note, selecting breeding pairs with desirable traits. They already had those traits, and the genes which code for them. Selecting and creating are not the same action. Thus, bait and switch again. The magical art of distraction. Want to see evolution? Look over there, at those dogs! Don't fall for it, kids. Keep looking up his sleeves. Keep your eye on the Queen of Hearts.
Gradually accentuating particular traits in successive populations. Poodles, Rottweilers, Great Danes, Hollywood red carpet purse dogs. All this fabulous kinetic art was created, and continues to be created, by humans manually hijacking the mechanism of evolution.
Yes, and all of those dogs were created by removing genes. No new genes were added. A poodle is a mutant with far less genetic information than a wolf. If a wolf is a bowl of chicken noodle soup, a poodle is just the celery pieces from the soup. It's missing a lot of ingredients. You don't get a bowl of chicken noodle soup by pulling out everything but the celery, and we didn't get wolves by pulling out enough genes to make a poodle. You cannot add by subtracting. That's a little science I like to call math.
Listen, nobody wants to be related to monkeys. Scientist 1, after the Scopes trial. Well, that was a catastrophe. Scientist 2, Yeah. Wait until they find out they're also related to friggin' carrots. But that's just too crazy to believe. Cannot be a defense against science.
While he does not say so, I suspect he thinks this is the position of groups like Answers in Genesis. But come on, people! Do you really think they've published books, videos, and a website for more than 30 years on the premise, that sounds crazy? Please, go read some of their articles. Watch some of their videos. Stop deciding what they do based on the ranting of the local YouTube atheist drunkard.
Why do you have sharp canine teeth? An appendix.
I actually devote an entire video in my Evolution 101 series to explaining how this vestigial organ nonsense is not only no help to evolution, but in the case of the appendix, old news. We know why we have one. We've known for years. But the evolutionists are too stuck on their theory to keep up with actual science.
Hair under your arms? If your body was designed for its current usage, there's a lot of inefficiency there. If it seems, rather, to be in the process of becoming less bestial, well, that's because it is. So if someone asks, do you believe in evolution? They are framing it wrong. That's like asking, do you believe in blue?
I'm trying to think of a way to explain what I'm thinking here without using the word stupid. And all I can come up with is ignorant and arrogant. Asking if you believe in evolution is actually a lot more like asking, do you believe in the flying spaghetti monster?
Evolution is nothing more than a fairly simple way of understanding what is unquestionably happening. You don't believe in it, you either understand it or you don't.
So, he tells us how evolution works, then gives two examples of things doing the complete opposite of what evolution requires, and now he tells us it's unquestionably happening. Let me state a fact here. He does not understand it.
But pretending evolution is a matter of faith can be a clever way to hijack the conversation and pit it into false duality against religion. And that's how we end up with people decrying evolution, even as they eat their strawberries and pet their dogs, because they've been led to believe faith can only be held in one or the other.
And now we hit the reason for this intellectual travesty. This whole poorly planned and badly botched article was one big middle finger to the creationist, whose position he also doesn't understand at all.
But there's no reason for people of faith to reject the mountains of data and the evidence of their own senses.
Evidence which he has failed to give, and evidence of their own senses he says we cannot see. This guy didn't read his own article, and like I said, it's because the rest doesn't matter to him. This is a backhanded slap to the face of creationism he knows nothing about.
Reconciling is easy. Believe, if you want to, that God set up the rules of evolution among his wonders, along with the laws of physics and probability, and everything else we can see and measure for ourselves. But don't deny evolution itself, or gravity, or the roundness of Earth. That's just covering your eyes and ears. And only monkeys would do that.
And again, I am amazed that he has a paragraph about how evolution happens so slowly that we can't observe it, and now he lumps it in with everything else we can see and measure for ourselves. And having failed so poorly to offer any examples of evolution, because, let's face it, none exist, he has to wad it up and roll it into gravity and the roundness of the Earth, as if there is any relationship to evolution in those two. I can think of something they have in common. Gravity was described by Isaac Newton, a Christian who believed the Bible, and the Bible itself describes the Earth as being round in the Old Testament. But according to Kevin here, if you reject evolution, you also reject the existence of gravity and think the Earth is flat. But then if you follow that logic, Kevin only thinks the Earth is round, or that gravity is real, because he thinks evolution is real. If I could prove to him that evolution is false, he would apparently stop believing in gravity around Earth. I think there's a lot of science Kevin doesn't understand.
I think his name is Keith.
Yeah, whatever.
So what is the point?
Well, the summary of this article could read as follows. You can't see evolution happen, but if you could, it would be everywhere, and everything, and that's why Christians are stupid. Kevin has proven the very thing he meant to, but in the opposite direction. He obviously believes evolution is a real thing, but he also obviously doesn't understand it. I think it's time for him, and everyone else, to stop believing in evolution. Science tells us what Genesis tells us. God made the world and everything on it. God made the bowl of chicken soup that all these piles of spaghetti, chunks of chicken, and handfuls of celery came from in the first place. Evolution wants us to believe you can create a bowl of chicken noodle soup by starting with a handful of celery and losing a few pieces. Every design needs a designer, and every recipe needs a cook. That DNA you've got is the recipe to make you, written by the greatest master chef in the universe. And in the beginning, God created. Alright, well, thanks for being here, Osky.
It's always a pleasure. Let us go get some tacos.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's my turn to buy. Thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks for letting me be your renter friend.